Yo, 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 what's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to yet again another fantastic indie creator interview. It's your Cape Crusader Cody, and we are keeping it geekly with our new friend Yan. We're here to break down Joe Flamingo and everything in between. And there is something crazy happening in Joe, but we're not going to break that down quite yet. First and foremost, Yan, welcome to the stream. Give us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, thanks. I'm the webcomic creator, Joe Flamingo. I also worked as a cartoonist, animator, and I don't know what else to say, really. It's just me.
So you do a little bit of animation as well. That seems like it's a fun gig as well. It kind of seems like it would go hand in hand with like illustrating webcomics and such.
A little bit. Right now, I'm not animating currently, but my focus right now is webcomic. I'm just taking a break and doing all that stuff.
So how did you end up getting into webcomics? I mean, I had the opportunity to read Joe Flamingo. You have a couple chapters available on multiple platforms, but it was such an interesting take. I love the character as well. Was this like your first break into creating comics, or did you create any stories previously?
Well, Joe Flamingo, I would say, is like my official break. I did many years ago try to do a webcomic. It was horrible. My title was like unpronounceable, and I just scrapped the whole thing. I was like, no, I don't. It was a good lesson though. I learned the difference between having a concept and having an actual story. I had this big concept where like, what if being a bad guy is doing good and good is the evil, and it was like huge concept, but like I didn't actually have like an actual plot of like chapter 1, 2, 3. I just had an idea. But Joe Flamingo, interestingly enough, is my older brother did like comic books since he was a kid, so I kind of grew up with that, like reading my older brother's comic, and of course, I wanted to be cool too, so I started drawing up my own. And Joe Flamingo is kind of like a remake of my childhood comic that I did many years ago.
So give us a little bit about Joe Flamingo. His character design, I love how the hair, like the tip of the one looks, supposed to resemble a beak, but he's a really interesting character. Give us, a little bit about, what he's about, and that special little creature inside of his subconscious. I thought that was a really interesting thing too.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing because, like I said, he's based on like my childhood character, and I kind of just like I was doing all these concept drawings, and the pink hair, the flamingo thing kind of came later, but I wanted to give him pink hair because I'm a big Legend of Zelda fan. To the Past was my favorite video game. I was like, I want a character. Why he needs pink hair. I need a character with pink hair. So I just was like, why don't I give him pink hair? And then it's like, what's pink? A flamingo. Joe Flamingo. It rhymes. That's fun. And so that's where it came from.
It's catchy. It's catchy. So, why have this creature inside of him that's driving him insane, though? I mean, within the prologue, I just thought it was like such a humorous like interaction between the two, and it's funny too how he's able to quell it by drinking. So like, what's the purpose of this creature? Like, how did it even end up inside of him?
Well, that would kind of go to a bit of spoiler place. We're gonna get there, and all the answers will be, all questions will be answered. But I'm also a huge fan of Lovecraft, and so I love this cosmic horror concept. But I thought, like, what would be most to it? I see a lot of like movies that try to do Lovecraft, but sometimes they get it or they don't get it. So I thought, like, what would be my twist? And I love, I just thought, like, I'm a goofy guy. It's what if I take like cosmic horror, but in a new twist? And that's why like the whole flamingo thing that's gonna play, and it's stuck in his subconscious. So what if, the creature is not Joe's friend? They're not teaming up, but they want to, they have a mutual goal of separating each other. He's trapped in this doofus's mind, and he's like, Maybe here, and it's like every time, just him existing in his brain is causing him anguish. Like kind of like the way how I write it, how I picture like Joe's life is basically, you ever have a toothache? Imagine a toothache in your brain, and that feels so. And like, when I was a kid, I tried to make Joe funny, and I watched cartoons like South Park and The Simpsons, and their drinking was like, I just, make him like Homer. He's funny. But now that I'm older and I actually know how to write properly, I thought it'd be like an interesting gimmick where he's the drinking actually has a plot point.
Yeah. So what is Joe's like official job? The prologue kind of led me to speculate a couple various different things, but and without diving too deep into spoiler territory, but like, what is his purpose? Like, what does he do within this comic?
Well, without going to spoil, he's kind of a rebel guy. We'll see in a little bit in the future. We'll have like a flashback, I see maybe like a whole volume, so around 10 chapters of his childhood in the future. But he's a little bit later after the prologue, I think in almost chapter 9, I believe. We see he gets kind of like his own little job that he does. So he's kind of like a paranormal problem solver.
Okay. Yeah. And problem solving he does within the prologue. I mean, he comes in guns blazing. Well, not even guns blazing, knives blazing. And I just love how action-packed this is. Before we dive into the prologue, because we're actually going to take an opportunity to deep dive it a little bit, give us a little bit about the creative process that goes into this. You're the writer and the artist, right?
Yeah, it's all me.
So, like, what's your average day look like when you're creating these pages for Joe Flamingo?
Well, I come up with just like a concept of like a plot that would be fun, and I usually kind of draw it by the belt. I don't plan it out too far. And if like I rough it out, like sketch wise. And sometimes it happens where I scrap like entire like 5 pages because that didn't work. Because the character kind of grew on his own. But I come up with an interesting concept in my brain. I typically don't write it down unless like my pacing, I can feel it like by pacing wrong. That's where I start writing like bullet points and try to fix that. But yeah, it's very improv.
I really like, we were talking backstage a little bit about your upload schedule, and I really like how you do it page by page for, I think it's Tapis or Tapia. I have trouble pronouncing it as well. But then you take that, and once you have like a full like chapter volume, you upload it to Global Comics. So I really like the way you're really dicing that content out there. Is it harder to do it page by page, or do you find that process a little bit easier when constructing this?
I'm not sure, honestly. I'm still figuring out. For me, it works. I like to do it page by page, but I'm not gonna pretend like I know. I'm like a big professional. I'm not like writing wise, I'm not Alan Moore. Artist wise, I'm not Alex Ross. So I'm like we're near close to that. But I am me, and what works for me is so far that's what it works.
So do you tend to, do you tend to draw first and sketch around, like panel around and write around your drawing, or do you come up with the idea in your head first? I know you said you kind of make it up along the way, but when you're actually doing the process, what does that look like as well?
Well, I have major plot points in that I plan in my head beforehand before I touch the page. It's all digitally, but you know what I mean? But yeah, I get like these plot points, and everything in between I kind of just fill out as I go. Like I have a blank page, I do a line to just like a straight line. It's like, okay, that's the first panel. What happens? And I think for a bit, like maybe 30 seconds, and then I just do it. Yeah. So
with uploading daily though, does that like pose any sort of issue? It would almost feel like you'd have to plan these pages out to like entice and leave people wanting more, but also to fit in a way that's gonna like make sense within like a combined story. Like in my head, that just seems like it is a hard feat to do.
Yeah, I mean, there were times where there was like 2 months in between uploads, just because I had to. I mean, real life happens as well. You know, I mentioned previously, it's like you have a concept, but there's a difference between having a concept and a story. Sometimes I had an idea, like I believe it was chapter 10. My concept was completely different than what happened when I actually sat down and did it. But if it works and like the flow is there and it feels right, I just, instead of fighting it, trying to fit like a square peg in a round hole, I just let it live organically.
No, that makes sense. Let's go ahead. I think right now would be a perfect segue. Let's go and check out the first prologue over at Global Comics. So we are looking at Joe Flamingo, issue 1 prologue, Joe versus the walking talking mustache. So we see Joe busting through the gates, and I mean, like I said, it's like, you know, I would say guns blazing, but he doesn't believe in guns. You know, these character designs are pretty interesting as well. So what was, you know, when you were creating these guards or these henchmen, what type of influences were you drawing from?
I was just thinking of like occult. What does like a typical occult member, like cult member, like, and I thought of you know, just hooded guys. I thought of actually in Earthbound, if I think it's like in a city town, there's like these blue cult people, and they wear like these hoods, and it's like, yeah, that seems about right. I kind of went with that direction.
I also love how the scooter looks like a flamingo as well. You fully committed to the flamingo idea, and I love it. I'm here for it.
Yeah, I came up with that idea like pretty early on in like the drawing board while I was designing him, and I thought of like toy. You know, you got like Batmobile, Thundercats have the big tank thing. It's like, what would Joe have? And it's like, he can't be too cool. It's Joe. He's doofus, but he's like kind of like borderline. It's like, oh, it's lame, but it's kind of cool. Like, I gave him an oversized back wheel that doesn't make any sense.
And I love. We were talking backstage too. How there's, you know, obviously there's some violence, but it's not. It's like it's more implied, like this dude getting like shanked in the head with a knife. Obviously he's probably not walking away, but you know, I love how you were able to kind of do that without like diving too deep into the gore aspect of it.
Yeah, like for the gore wise, because like I wanted an action. I love action, and I just thought of Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball is like my big favorite, and it can get pretty violent in Dragon Ball, but it's still for kids, you know?
Yeah.
So that's kind of like what I tried to lean for, except for my Halloween special that I'm doing. That one's a bit, you know, too much there. But for the main series, definitely like on that line, say.
You know, and reading this a second time, I don't know if this was like intentional or not, but it almost feels like this wine spill right here is like a little bit of foreshadowing.
I thought of that like much later. I was like, hey, look, that's a happy accident.
Yeah, hey, that happens though, and that's why, you know, we were talking earlier, like going through this together is like such an interesting thing, because like, you know, had I just been reading it the first time, I never would have caught it, but reading it previously and going through it again, I'm like, dude, wait, hold on a second. So give us a little bit about this guy. He has such a like prominent mustache. Like what's going on with this mustache, dude?
How to up with this guy again? I think I like cartoony, iconic characters. Like you can like at a glance, it's like memorable, and a big fluffy mustache. I thought like Wario, who was like and E Honda, like a fat guy, but who's muscly, kind of like Kingpin from Marvel Comics. I kind of thought that.
Yeah.
And a big mustache, kind of like going with like the Mario thing.
Kind of giving me some Eggman vibes too as well.
Oh, yeah. That's true. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention like a big influence, like especially for art wise. I like European comics. like Franco-Belgian comics. That's like a big influence. So that's why like his character, like the Mr. Mustache here, he's I try to draw him like reminiscent to like Franco-Belgian European comics.
I love this fight too because it gets so climatic. We see the Mustache Man start to kind of get overwhelmed a little bit, but then he has a trick up his sleeve, and then we see him just totally transform, rips off the shirt, and there's nothing but muscle underneath that cardigan. So what kind of what did you draw from? Because this guy looks like a beast at this point. Like what influences are we seeing here?
The six-pack is from E Honda from Street Fighter. I wanted like big muscle, but kind of like a round dude. It just kind of happened organically. I can't say like it's from something specific. It's he transforms into, he has horns. I thought it'd be interesting. It's like weird, a bit of like the cult and the creature in Joe's head. There's a connection, and Joe's like, he's in the dark and he's trying to figure it all out. And that's what the story is kind of going.
I love this too. He's like, "You'll regret the pain you've wrought," and he's like, "That's a good line."
yeah, that's like basically me talking to myself as I was writing this. Like, hey, I'm coming up with like, it's either people will find it really corny and cringy, but then it's like, well, that's the character. That's what it's supposed to be like. It's not because I'm writing cringy stuff. It's the character.
I love this too. We see him inhale and his whole body gets put into it. And then Joe like takes this knife and just like cuts right through it. And this dude has no idea what's going on. So does this knife have magical properties, or is this like the creature within Joe controlling it at this point? Like, what causes this knife to be able to do that?
Well, I don't think it would be too much of a spoil. I think I can give a bit of a little insider here, an exclusive insider.
Hey, let's go.
You may notice, like especially in the beginning of chapter 1, where we get like a flashback of Joe being tied up by the cult, that the knife that Joe is using is the same one that was used in the cult ritual.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then so we see at this point,
there's something to it.
Joe is he's tapped out. He's used up all his energy, and this guy is just ready to keep going goblin mode on him. And I love this fight sequence. How we see these two bounce off each other, and then all of a sudden he's cracking electricity from the horns. Like, holy crap! What is going on with Mustache Man?
Yeah, he's got all these weirdo powers. It's when you're dealing with interdimensional creatures and weird cults, weird things happen. I wanted to start it off with like really interesting stuff. That's why I call like the prologue. It's just like let's start off like with a boss fight. No slow build up. Just let's get in.
No, I love like how like it's just like every panel is just filled with action left and right. And these two just keep going head to head. But then this is when kind of the voice starts really appearing right here. And yeah, we see Joe. He's like, "Great, you're back."
Yeah, because that's the thing. Joe is definitely a drinker. Not to endorse drinking, but it's a passing numbness. Your problem doesn't go away when you drink. It always comes back. So
and I like how. I like how you colored the thought bubble too to indicate like when that voice is talking and when Joe is.
Yeah, it's just like I thought of like Deadpool. He has like two voices or something, and like I think they were like different colored speech bubbles. So I took like, I should do something like that to really, emphasize that it's a voice inside his head that's speaking.
And I really love this part in particular where he throws the knife, and dude's like, "Ha, you missed," and Joe's like, "No, hold on," and calls it back like it's freaking like Mjolnir. And I'm like, what? It like cuts right through his heart, and I'm like, dude, what is going on? Like, this knife is badass.
Yeah, there's a connection with Joe and that knife, as I mentioned before, with like the cult thing, the ritual. That there's something, And that knife is not just like a rend. It is basically like the equivalent of Thor and Mjolnir's, like the Thor's hammer there.
And then right here we see, he's every time I speak, it's a splitting headache. I really like the speech bubbles here too, kind of the ugh with it like dripping down. And then we see him pulling out his flask to get a little bit of drink to shut up that voice. Yeah, he kicks the dead body. So he's like, you went and died on me. I love that too.
He's my anti-hero for sure. He's
he's like only one thing left to do, and sets the whole place on fire while he's like happily riding out on a scooter.
Yeah, don't drink and drive, kids.
And then right here, we were talking backstage about this. I thought this was an interesting way to leave off, though. We have his little board right here. We have the mustache man crossed off, but then there's some other faces. We at least have 2 more like big guys right here, and then it looks like at least 1, 2, 3, 4 dudes underneath them as well. So it looks like Joe's gonna have his hand full in the chapters to come.
For sure, yeah. There's a lot of going on, and in Tapas, I put Easter eggs on that. I think you see there's like a very roughly drawn Waluigi in there, and I changed it. Yeah, because at the time I think people were like Waluigi for Smash, Waluigi for... so it was in my brain. It was just in my brain. I was like, I had to get it out somehow. But yeah, now that I was doing chapter 1 and so forth, funny enough, those 2 characters that we see beneath, they show up, and that I was planning was going to be much shorter, was going to be like maybe 2 chapters or 3 chapters. It ended up being like 6, 7 or 8. That's just, that's my advice. If you want to make a comic book, whatever you're planning, it's like, oh, this will be like just a short, yeah, well, imagine it times 5. Like that's like the length it will actually be.
So what's next for you though? You are currently working on the Halloween special? Yeah.
Then after the official chapter 11, and that'll be like an episodic. And it'll be like my last episodic. I put some episodic chapters where it's like kind of standalone. Chapter 11 will start with an episodic one, and then after that, that's where like the next big story arc will start. Yeah.
Oh,
I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, and I appreciate you coming on here, breaking down Joe Flamingo and everything in between. It was such an awesome experience going through that prologue chapter together, and kind of just like, seeing what went behind the creation process. Before we wrap things up completely though, as much as this is a podcast where I like to focus on you and your book, it's a nice platform for anyone who might be new or even, experienced in this industry, but struggling to get motivated to go. So with that being said, for anyone out there who's listening, having trouble getting going on their project, what advice would you offer them to help them get motivated just to get started on it?
Don't try to make it perfect. Just get it done. Just this is what Joe Flamingo was for me. I just wanted to improve, and whatever mistakes happen, it's fine because it's Joe Flamingo. That's what he's there for. So just basically you hear it all the time, like just do it, and it's like, but my little adage to that would be, don't try to make it perfect. Just be fine with imperfection. It doesn't have to be.
No, I think that's, that is perfect, right? Like, you don't have to do anything too extravagant. Just doing it, just making sure it's done. That's the battle itself. And I think that's where a lot of people get hung up on is trying to make it perfect the first time out the gate.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, oh my, the lines are not perfect, they're a bit sketchy. That's fine. Just move on to the next page. Just as long as it's done, just move on to the next page. You'll improve eventually. Like what we looked at, like the prologue, I redid it. I happened to have time. I wasn't planning to, but I happened to have time, and I decided like redraw it. And even then, it's not even perfect. It was fine. So
no, it was still a fun read, though. You're right. It was still a fun read. I still had fun. And I'm sure
that's my goal.
Yeah. So once again, thank you so much for stopping by, Yan. Everyone watching, be sure to check out Yan's work on Tapas, Global Comics, and anywhere else that hosts webcomics as well. Once again, thank you, Yan. I hope everyone has an awesome Thursday, but most importantly, guys, keep it geekly.